Okay guys, this is revision of chapter 15, which is quadratic equations, right? Just so we know before I start talking about this, a quadratic equation has an x squared term, then it has an x term, and then it has a number, okay? So it's got something x squared, so maybe 3x squared, plus a 4x plus a number equal to 0. An equation means it has an equal sign, right? So an example of a quadratic equation would be something like 3x squared plus 4x minus 1 equals 0. 2x squared minus 3x plus 7 equals 0, etc. Right? So x squared term, x term number, right, equal to 0. Right? Okay. So when you're solving your quadratic equations, girls, you have a choice to do it two ways. Solve with factors or solve with a quadratic formula. Now, you can always use the quadratic formula even if the factors work, okay? But you can't use the factors if you need to use the formula. How do you know you need to use the formula? I'll talk about that when I get to that example. So I'm going to do 3 examples where I solve with factors. Then I'm going to do 2 examples where I solve with a quadratic formula. So for example, example 1, the question is solve. So we have an x squared term, an x term. Now there's no number because the number is 0. Okay? So to factorize this, and we learned that in just the previous chapter, to factorize this you take out what's common. So there's an x common. So what's left? 2x minus 9 equals 0. Right? So you let x equal 0, so x equals 0 is one answer, and the other answer you get from 2x, whatever's in the bracket, equal to 0. So x equals 0, 2x minus 9 equals 0. Solving this, x is on one side, numbers on the other, so leave the 2x, bring over the minus 9, becomes a plus 9, divide each side by 2, and you get x is equal to 9 over 2. If you want to change that to 4.5, 4.5 you can, but you don't have to. Okay, so that's one type of one where you solve with factors. Example 2 is also solving with factors. So you look at this and you say, well, how do I factorize this? This is the difference of 2 squares, guys. So that's 2x all to be squared, take away 7 all to be squared. So in chapter 2 we learned how to factorize that, and it was a 2x and a 2x, a 7 and a 7, and a plus and a minus. Right, that's, if they ask you to factorize you're done, but they ask me to solve. Right, so to solve you take each bracket and let it equal 0. So the first bracket reads 2x plus 7, you let that equal 0, and the second bracket reads 2x minus 7, and you let that equal to 0. So you have 2 equations here to solve, x is on one side, numbers on the other. So leave the 2x, the 7 comes over the wall and becomes a minus 7. Then you divide each side by 2, right, and you get x is equal to minus 7 over 2. Again, if you want to change it to minus 3.5, minus 3.5, you can, but you don't have to. Here, leave the 2x, bring over the minus 7, it becomes a plus 7. Then divide each side by 2 again, and you get x is equal to plus 7 over 2. So, same answers, different sign. Okay? And the next example is also solving with factors. So again, it's going back to chapter 2. So you need to factorize this. So from chapter 2, I know that 5 by 6 is 30. So I'm looking for the factors of 30 that add together to give me 13. So factors of 30, 1 by 30, add to give me 31. 2 by 15, add to give me 70. 3 by 10, add to give me 13. So I know my factors that I'm looking for are 3 and 10. So I split that into a 3x and a 10x. A plus means I'm giving them the same sign, over here means I'm giving them both a minus. So it's 5x squared, right, plus 6 equals 0. Okay? So out of the first two, you take out what's common. There's an x common, so you get 5x minus 3. Out of the second two, you take out what's common. There's a 2, but I'm taking a minus 2 out. So don't forget, when you take out a minus sign, you have to change the middle sign. So that would be 5x, that would become a minus, and 2 3s are 6, equals 0. So my two brackets are the same, that's what I wanted. So the first bracket is x minus 2, made up from the bit here, and the second bracket is 5x minus 3. Right? If they ask me to factorize, I'm done, but they ask me to solve. So what you do is you let each bracket equal 0. So x minus 2 equals 0, and 5x minus 3 equals 0. Then solving, x is on one side, numbers on the other. So leave the x, bring the minus 2 over the wall, it becomes a plus 2. Here we get 5x is equal to, when minus 3 comes over, it becomes a plus 3. Then you divide each side by 5, and you get x is equal to 3/5. So again, I've got two answers, x is 2 and x is equal to 3/5. Okay, example 4, girls, is using the quadratic formula. How do I know I'm using the quadratic formula? Because there'll be this extra bit tagged on. Give your answer in surd form. A surd has a square root in it, right? So give your answer, and the answer is going to have a square root sign in it, right? Or in the next example, we see give your answer correct to two decimal places. Okay, so here's your minus b formula. It's in your log tables, right? Okay, so first thing you have to do is what a is, what b is, what c is. A is, what b is, and what c is. So a is the number in front of x squared. Now you don't take the x squared, you just take the number in front of it. So there's no number here, so that means 1 is understood to be there. B is the number in front of x, which is 2, and c is the number on its own, which is a minus 5. Don't forget to take the minus. So it's a, b, c. Please note no x's. You're just taking the numbers, not the x's. Right? Okay, so you fill in. There's a minus sign. Then there's b, which is 2. Then we have plus minus, that's to get me two answers, leave that for the moment, over b squared is 2 to be squared, minus 4 times a is 1, c is minus 5, all over 2 times a. Sorry, 2 times 1. So what you do is, right, put all of this into your calculator, make this a plus. Okay, so when you put it into your calculator, right, okay, you press the fraction button first, right, on top I have minus 2, and as I say, choose plus, right, plus the square root of, open bracket, 2, close bracket, squared, minus 4, open bracket, 1, close bracket, open bracket, minus 5, close bracket, then go underneath the line and put in 2 times 1, so 2 bracket 1 close bracket equals, right, and this is your first answer and this is in surd form. So one answer is minus 1 plus root 6, right? What you do then is you go back, sorry, I'm after cancelling that, don't cancel it off, right, I'm after cancelling it off, so I just have to type it in again, sorry. Minus 2 plus the square root of, I'll just do some of it in my head, 24 to equal. So you get minus 1, sorry, I forgot, there's a minus, oh yeah, there's a minus 1, then use, without cancelling, use your back arrow and go back and change that plus, change that to a minus, and you get your second answer, which is minus 1 minus root 6. And as I say, that's your answer in surd form. A surd has a square root sign, so there's one answer, there's the second answer with a square root sign. Okay? Example 5, right, is the same. Use the minus b formula. Solve. How do you know to use your minus b formula? This time it says give your answer correct to 2 decimal places. Okay, so that means that's the clue to use the minus b formula. So there's the minus b formula, it's in the log tables. A is the number in front of x squared, which is a 3. B is the number in front of x, which is a 7. And C is the number by itself, which is a minus 2. Make sure you take the minus signs. Okay? Right, so then you fill in, so it's a minus sign, then it's B is 7, plus minus, the the square root of b squared is 7b squared minus 4a is 3 and c is minus 2 all over 2 times a, which is 2 times 3, right? So off you go to your calculator, put the plus in first, okay? So what you do is you press your fraction button first, right? Then you go minus 7, as I say use the plus to start with, the square root of 7 squared minus 4 open bracket 3 close bracket open bracket minus 2 close bracket all over 2 times 3, so 2 bracket 3 close bracket equals, right? And as I say, the first answer, girls, the answer there is in third form. So I'm just going to write that down, right, in third form. But they asked me for decimals, so you just press X to D. So X to D that and round it up to 2 places decimals. So it's 0.2573 whatever. So when that's rounded to 2 places decimals, it's 0.26, right? Then you go back and you change the sign. So use the back arrow to get back to that plus and delete that out and change it to a minus. Press equals, and again it will give you in third form, but you press X to D and it will give it to you in as a decimal, and you round it up to 2 places decimals, so that's minus 2.59. okay, so that's the minus b formula. So you know to use it because they say solve correct to 2 decimal places, or they'll say solve and give your answer in third form. Okay, and the last bit in this chapter is, here I've been giving you the equation and asking you for the answers, right? In the last bit I'm giving you the answers, I'm going to ask you for the equation. Okay, so in the last section they don't give you the equation and ask you for the answers, they give you the answers and they ask you for the equation. Girls, sometimes they call the answers roots. Roots is another word for solutions, answers, etc. Right? So when you worked out the answer, you got 3n minus 1. So that means x was equal to 3 or x is equal to minus 1. Right? That was originally x, if you bring over the 3, minus 3 equals 0. This is originally x plus 1 equals 0. Okay? So remember that was each bracket, so both brackets, each bracket gives you 0. So when both brackets are multiplied together, they also give you 0. So you're working backwards, you're putting it back together. Okay, and then to get your final answer, you multiply out the brackets, so it's x times x minus 1 minus 3 times x minus 1, and I'm multiplying out, so that would be x squared minus x minus 3x plus 3 equals 0, and you can put your x terms there in the middle. Minus x minus 3x will give me minus 4x, and then I have a plus 3 equals 0. So there's the equation that if I was to solve it, these would be the answers I get. Okay, so it's the opposite to what we were doing. Okay, and that basically sums up that chapter